Hello, it's your girl Trini Barbie, and I'm here with my mini me.
Hi, my name's Goddess, or at least that's what it says on the birth certificate.
And we're gonna be doing the reactions to how to beat Killer Klowns. Listen to his advice on how you can beat it, and just if anything we would do differently. All right, thank you.
If you were tricked into entering a death game where you could win $250,000 but were hunted by circus freaks, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the death game in Circus Kane. This girl is about to reveal the most disturbing story of all time. This police officer sits down with Tracy here and asks her about the horrifying crime she had been a victim of. She tells him that there were a series of invites sent to 8 innocent people who all needed money. The message offered participants $250,000 to survive a night of horrors, but didn't realize that this was a death trap. Several days ago, the contestants arrived at the place they were supposed to be picked up and meet each other for the first time. None of them have any idea why they were invited or if there's a secret connection between them, but they're interrupted when a SWAT van rolls up. The driver comes out with a rifle in his hand, and the group is herded into the back of the vehicle. The players are nervous and don't know if this is some kind of joke, but agree to be driven away towards the haunted house to compete for more money than they could dream of. On the way there, this writer Mark asks if anyone knows what they're going to experience, but the others tell him they only know the time and place. That's when a TV turns on and the game maker Kane appears on the screen. He explains they've been specially invited to take part in a revival of his show, and this pawn shop owner Ed is excited. It's clear he's a big fan, and the others ask what's so special about this Circus Kane guy. The man explains he was famous for running a traveling horror show that used to be popular, and Roxy here figures they've been invited either because of their social media following or are familiar with the man's work. The host must be using them to drum up interest in rebooting his show, and since this man is a pawn shop owner, he realizes his Circus Kane merchandise could rise in value. Billy here makes a joke, asking if he plans on killing the man to drive up the price, but the shop owner insists he isn't a murderer like Kane was. Shocked, Scott here asks if he's being serious, and the man pulls out an old newspaper clipping, revealing that the game master had allegedly burned someone alive. The incident became so notorious that there was even a pop song written about it, but before he can continue, sleeping gas is suddenly pumped into the room, knocking everyone out. Later, the drivers open up their truck, and the group climbs out of the vehicle to find they've been taken to this giant mansion. None of them remember how they got here, and the guards order them to head up the stairs. Approaching the building, they realize it's Kane's house of horrors, but there's nobody around for miles. That's when a strange old man suddenly walks out of the mansion and invites them inside. With no time to lose, the contestants walk into the building and the old man shuts the door behind them, but the players will soon find 6 rooms that they'll have to escape, and there's no turning back. Okay, these people are not thinking clearly. If you were offered to compete for a ridiculous amount of money, only to learn that it's taking place in a remote mansion hosted by a murderer, anybody with a brain would probably decline and call the police. It was a horrible idea to get inside of this van, and now they've been gassed. But the truth is, they already have everything they need to figure out how long they've been unconscious. First of all, they each have cell phones, and we can clearly see that many of them own a watch. So if someone remembers the time they were picked up, it wouldn't be hard to figure out how long their journey was. We should also expect that these rifle-carrying clowns wouldn't be going past the speed limit because it would attract attention from local law enforcement. And getting caught with a group of unconscious people in the back of your van is a pretty big no-no. With this in mind, calculating the average speed limit multiplied by the travel time should give us a reasonable estimate of how many miles away we are from our pickup spot. If the players here know the local area well enough, it should give them a clear idea what part of the state they're currently in, and it will help them communicate their location to the cops if they don't have GPS on their phones. Now, when these clowns stepped out of the van armed with rifles, the group thought it was just for the sake of theatrics, but if they were thinking clearly, they'd realize nobody had asked for informed consent or had signed any liability waivers. These are immediate red flags, and any legitimate business would always inform people of the risks beforehand and have them sign release forms in order to avoid legal liability. To make things worse, this man already knew that the host, Balthazar Kane, had been arrested for setting someone on fire, and putting this all together, it should have been enough of a warning sign to outright reject participating in this game at all. It's too late now, but with all of this in mind, I would have waited until we were being ushered into the house and tried to quietly slip out the door as soon as one of the guards was distracted, leaving the others behind so that my disappearance is much less obvious. Having said that, $250,000 is a crap ton of money, so if we were willing to overlook all these red flags for profit, then we need to expect that things might get very ugly. That's why I wouldn't touch anything and would never enter a room first or last. I'd also engage in small talk with the butler to see if I could get him to break character and talk about his real life. Oftentimes, people will drop an act and have a genuine conversation if other people show an interest. I'd ask him about the game rules to make sure I know what to expect, and if we're lucky, he might give me a crucial piece of information or at least some hints about what's to come. The group approaches a screen that has a message telling them to look inside to see your fate before the lights flicker and the words are replaced with a human skeleton. It takes them all by surprise and they laugh it off, but Tracy here notices something's wrong with Eddie. He takes a medication for his bad heart and reassures the group that he'll be okay. Moments before a door opens behind them, the players head through and enter the death game with no idea that this was their biggest mistake. They walk into a large room thinking that nothing they've seen so far is scary and it'll be easy to win the money, but that's when they notice something strange. This guy looks at his phone realizing he still has service and points out it doesn't fit the haunted house thing, but gets interrupted when the TV turns on. Kane welcomes them to the game, explaining there are cameras set up to capture everything they do, including dying, and once they've completed all the challenges, the players will be given their reward. If someone wants to give up, they must say Balthazar Kane, you win again, but forfeit the right to the money. With that explained, he warns them that they must let the darkness be their guide before the TV shuts off. Suddenly, a door swings open and the writer decides to investigate, walking into the other room, but just as he invites the others to join him, the door slams shut. They try to open it, but discover that the door is locked. No one can pull it open, and to make matters worse, the writer sees something terrifying approaching him. He begs them to open up, screaming for help, and when this nerd Billy turns the knob, it finally opens. Going through, the group sees that their teammate has disappeared, but suddenly a man in a jester costume pops out. A light turns on, and he reveals that their friend has been stuffed in a magician's box, but what's strange is that his mouth has been duct taped shut. That's when the clown stands up and begins putting on a show for the contestants until he finally pulls out a chainsaw. He brings it down into the box and slices the man in half, making that one victim down with 7 more to go. One of the girls insists they should call the police, but Billy here tells everyone to calm down, arguing that the writer is actually a part of the show. He must have been sent as a plant to drum up the drama, and Eddie here agrees, remembering that the Circus King shows would pull off this exact trick in the past. It convinces the group that this death is staged, and the group leaves the room, but they'll soon discover this place has been designed to murder them all. Okay, this is horrifying. One of the players has just been murdered for spectacle by an evil clown. Given all of the major red flags they've already seen today, these people should be a lot more concerned about what's going on. Instead, they're standing behind a glass wall dripping in their friend's blood and trying to convince themselves that it's all a part of the game. Now, to give credit where credit is due, it's not completely unreasonable that this is the first conclusion they arrived at, because as obvious as it seems, these people have already been brainwashed by something called normalcy bias. When we go through our daily lives, we assume that our experiences won't deviate from what we think is normal, and will sometimes retrofit new information into old models, even if it isn't supported by the evidence that's right in front of our faces. From the player's perspective, it's more likely that this is a trick than to think someone has actually been killed, because it would break every norm. It's a lot easier for the brain to process what they're seeing if they normalize it, and with $250,000 on the line, they have a very strong incentive to convince themselves that it's just a game. Having said that, not one of them bothered to stop and ask for any kind of assurances for their own safety. If it were me, I would start testing whether or not we have the freedom to leave this place, because if every exit is locked and the only way out is through, then there's no doubt we've just wandered into a death game. This is an extremely important consideration, because the first person to realize this is going to have a massive advantage over the others. This one piece of information lets us begin strategizing for the scenario, and that includes making sure we're the only remaining survivors. If everyone else in the group is still trying to figure out what's happening, then it gives us a better chance of influencing their decisions and guiding them into potential traps to eliminate them. That way, we aren't taking on as much risk, and it gives us a much higher chance of surviving by the end. Now, as far as death games go, we can already tell that it's going to include puzzles, which means we can use tried and true escape room tactics to solve them. Luckily, there are some useful tips we can get from a professor of game design named Scott Nicholson, and one of them is to appoint someone as the manager of our group. During the game, this manager will be told updates on any clues or puzzles we find, and relays information to others so we all know what to be looking for. This ensures everything runs smoothly, and it helps us solve the death games a lot more quickly than if we tried solving the puzzles on our own. Using this strategy, the best thing we can do when we enter a new room is to have everyone fan out and start looking for clues. They should check under tables, carpets, pockets of clothing, and look for any information that stands out from the norm. It's also worth pointing out that most escape rooms will only use each clue to solve a single aspect of the puzzle. puzzle, so we should assume this one-use policy applies here as well until proven otherwise. If we implemented these tips, we wouldn't need to worry about asking Kane for any help to solve his puzzles, allowing us to escape this place as quickly as possible.
Love slots? The DraftKings Casino app's got you covered. They got tons of slots to choose from. All these options, I feel like a slot machine. Come to Papa.
All players get a free chance at a daily reward on DraftKings Casino. The crown is yours.
Eddie here tells the group that all the doors are locked, and this goth girl suggests the video might have contained a hidden message. Everyone remembers that the kid, Scott, filmed it, and they all gather around him, but as they watch it, Eddie notices that the footage is looped. The audio is playing over an old Circus King commercial, and he's seen it so many times, he's figured out that everything except the last line has changed. Kane said, "Let the darkness guide you," and that must be their hint. Roxy here suddenly realizes the light bulbs are special, and walks over to flip a switch, activating a black light. That's when they see an arrow on the floor and investigate a nearby cabinet, discovering a wooden box. Inside is a key, and they use it to unlock the door to the next room. Moving on through the game, the group enters a creepy nursery-themed puzzle, and in the center is a head locked in a cage. It's a disgusting prop, but that's when a recording begins to play, telling them to find another key to free the head from its cage, adding that the players are the apple of his eye. It's a strange clue, but the group begins to look around when Eddie here quickly finds an apple. There must be something inside, and Scott tosses him a pocket knife so he can cut the fruit open. The man pulls out a tiny key and gives it to the goth girl, but when she tries to unlock the door, it doesn't work. Scott here quickly figures out that it's meant for a padlock and uses it to open up the cage. Picking up the head, he shoves his hand in, but then Tracy suggests they check the eyeball instead. Nobody wants to do it, so this girl volunteers and rips it straight out of the socket, discovering the key attached to his optic nerve. They continue to the next challenge and find a ticket booth with a man wearing a demon costume, along with 2 doors on either side of the room. Tracy approaches the demon to ask for 7 tickets, and he pulls out a hand of giant playing cards. She quickly distributes them, and the group realizes that the doors have also been numbered. Splitting up into 2 teams, they try to enter their assigned rooms, but Roxy here points out there are photos on the wall descending in number. They realize it represents a countdown, and that means they might have to open the doors at the same time. On the count of 3, they turn the knobs, and the first team finds a hallway lined with barbed wire before a black light turns on, revealing that there are arrows marked out on the floor. Meanwhile, the others find a hallway with tiny platforms spaced out across the room. The girl figures out they need to use them to make it to the other side, but when Eddie here touches the ground, he discovers it's hot enough to burn his skin. Scott decides to go first and jumps onto a platform, not realizing that he's just set off a trap. Suddenly, an axe swings out of the wall and slices his arm open. This is going to be a lot harder than they thought, and one wrong move could kill them. Okay, these people are complete idiots. Both of the doors opened into something that was clearly a death trap, but none of them stopped to reconsider that they just witnessed a psychopathic clown saw someone in half. As soon as they witnessed what was inside of these rooms, they should have realized that they're not playing for $250,000. They're playing for their lives and looked for a way back out of this place. First of all, the floor is heated to a dangerous level, and this barbed wire is extremely sharp, which means one slip or fall could easily kill us. That means we can't trust anything that Kane the host tells us from here on out. If it were me, I'd try to convince the others of our situation, call the cops, and give them as much detail as possible about what's going on. They still have cell phone coverage, and it was an unbelievably huge mistake for Kane here to not install signal blockers in the walls of every room. The fact that they didn't take advantage of this and call the police right away means they deserve every bit of what's going to happen to them next. Once I called the police, I would then barricade the doors and find whatever improvised weapons I could to arm everyone in case Krusty the Clown tries to come back inside. This would put the players in total control of the game, because if the plan works, nobody would be able to force us to keep playing, and we could wait for the cops to show up with anything we can find to protect ourselves. As long as we don't discover any gas nozzles somewhere in the room to knock us unconscious, this would be the best strategy we have until rescue arrives. Now, if for whatever reason we had no choice but to move forwards through the game, I'd consider taking objects with me, as I could test the rooms by throwing things, seeing what happens before I take my next step. We know absolutely nothing about this place other than that it's dangerous, so throwing objects will give us a chance to learn by trial and error without getting killed for our mistakes. I'd also try manipulating the others to test out the traps first, so that I won't have to be the one putting my life on the line. It might seem difficult to do, but the truth is, one of the biggest motivators to act is by triggering the right emotion. That's why if I were in this situation, I would offer to go first, but move extremely slowly, and take so much time that someone else would be annoyed enough to move ahead. As simple as it sounds, this can actually stir up the group's anxiety levels, putting them in a position to make emotional decisions instead of logical ones. It might sound cold-blooded, and that's because it is, but this is still a death game, and if you aren't willing to get your hands dirty, then you're probably not going to survive. In the other hallway, the first team manages to get through the barbed wire, and most of the players manage to slip underneath the trap. But there's a problem. Billy here is way too big to fit between the wires, but this guy has a clever idea, throwing out a jacket to pull the larger man across to the other side. With no other ideas, Billy holds onto the sleeves, but as he's being dragged, the wire snags onto his flesh. He screams in pain, begging them to stop, but the other man insists they have to continue and pulls him through. It's agonizing, and Billy grabs him, furious that he would do that, but the girls manage to calm him down. This girl checks his back, telling him to stop being dramatic, and they agree to move on. Meanwhile, the other players manage to make it through the hallway one by one and narrowly avoid getting sliced to death. But just as they enter the next room, the door slams shut. It's locked, and Scott here believes the only way to escape is to use this test your strength machine. The pawn shop owner tells him to look for a mallet, but strangely, there isn't one anywhere. With no idea what comes next, they ask the game master for a clue, and an arrow suddenly lights up, pointing towards a locked crate. Eddie realizes it's a jack-in-a-box and they need to open it, but it's missing a hand crank. That's when he notices there are smaller jack-in-the-boxes and tells the group to start turning their cranks. After they're done turning the levers all the way, the crate pops open and a clown comes out. Eddie suffers from a heart attack and falls straight down onto the machine, hitting the bell with his weight. That makes 2 victims down, with 6 more to go. Meanwhile, in the other room, Billy here spots an arrow on the wall and it's pointing down at a box. This man tries to open it but discovers that it's locked. They need a key, and the group splits up to search for one, but as the large man starts looking through this pile of plushies, he never notices one of the clown dolls opening its eyes. Freaked out, one of the girls tries to warn them, but it's too late. The creature bites down on Billy's finger and chews it right off. He collapses to the ground screaming in pain, and this man begs the game master to let them out, but Roxy here insists she wants to continue. It sounds crazy, but she needs the money to take care of her brother and is willing to do whatever it takes, not realizing that the clown has already disappeared. Finding the key, this girl Tracy brings it back to the others, and the man uses it to open the box. Inside is a button, and he presses it, but nothing seems to happen. They can't activate it, and with no other choice, they decide to quit the game. Remembering the rules from the video, Billy starts chanting Balthazar Kane, you win again, so they can leave. But as he's tapping the button, he suddenly screams in pain. The clown has swung an axe straight into his back, murdering him, and that makes 3 victims down, with 5 more to go. Okay, this was not smart. Asking a serial killer clown for a hint at his game is just begging for a practical joke. To be honest, if your death becomes somebody's punchline, then you know you've made some bad life choices. After everything we've seen, Billy here should have known better than to trust Balthazar Kane, so if it were me, I would have told the group that I had already been injured and that it's someone else's turn to take the risk. Instead of asking the game master for a clue, I would have tried breaking the set to find other ways to leave. As far as we can tell, this place has such a bizarre layout that it's very likely these are all fake walls. That means they're probably made out of plywood or even drywall for lucky, and wouldn't be heavily reinforced. With this in mind, there's actually a very good chance we can bust through and win by not playing his game anymore. The more unpredictable our decisions, the more it breaks the game design, and if we aren't trying everything we can to get out of here, then we're already wasting time. As for Billy, he was the only person to get caught by the barbed wire, but the truth is, this never had to happen. The only reason he got hurt was because he raised his head before clearing the wire, and if someone had gone over to lift it up from his back, the man could have easily crawled the rest of the way out unharmed. The biggest mistake, however, was to enter the room and never look back, because what they aren't considering is that there are tons of things in here that could have helped. If I were in this situation, I would have grabbed this cloth banner off the wall, folded it up, and used it to handle the barbed wire as I climbed through. This would have kept me better protected in case I lose my balance. Now, one of the most important things to consider is that there are still members of this group that are less worried about their survival, and a lot more worried about the money. Roxy here admitted that she still wants to keep playing, and this is a really big problem, because as long as anyone in this group is prioritizing winning over escaping, everyone is a lot more likely to get murdered. If you look at the last rooms we were in, it's immediately clear that at any point, someone could have pushed another player straight into the barbed wire or onto the burning hot floor. One simple shove could completely eliminate the competition, so if it were me, I would tell Roxy here that if she stops playing and cooperates in our escape plan, everyone in the group will surrender their share of any potential winnings and help support her family. It's extremely important we de-incentivize her to use cold-blooded tactics, because with death traps and finger-biting clowns on the loose, a backstabbing player is the last thing we need. The murderer quickly runs out of the room, and Roxy decides to confront him, but is surprised to see the man appear on the other side of the hallway. The clown mocks the girl, motioning for her to come after him, and that makes her furious. She immediately chases the creature, thinking the barbed wire is an illusion, and gets caught in his trap. There's no way for her to escape, and the woman dies in front of her teammate, making that 4 victims down with 4 more to go. In the other room, the door suddenly unlocks, and the survivors decide they won't play anymore. Scott calls the cops and begs them to send an ambulance to the mansion, but he has no idea where they are. The operator reassures them the police will be able to track them down, but it'll take 2 hours for help to arrive. The entire group has to do their best to stay alive, and the 2 survivors leave the room, jumping back across the hall. Nervous, the girl hops onto one of the platforms and almost falls to her death. She's terrified of taking another leap, but her partner insists they have to keep going. The players make it back to the other side, where they reunite with the other team and find out they're the only people left. With no one else remaining, the group heads back to the main room and tries to leave, but the door is locked. Scott tries to pick the lock using his knife, and that's when this girl sees a button on the wall. Thinking it might lead to an exit, Carrie presses it, and the curtain in front of her flutters, indicating a door has been opened. Suddenly, one of the survivors sees a jester step into view, and is headed straight for them. Terrified, the group runs through the curtain and finds themselves in a room full of hanging body parts. It's clear the circus freaks had murdered several other victims, and with the killers getting closer, they walk deeper into the room. That's when a tricycle comes rolling their way, and it has glow sticks hanging from its handlebars. Tracy suggests they take them, and this guy walks over, but as soon as he picks them up, he's suddenly sprayed in the face. Panicking, he tries rubbing it off, when he realizes it's just water and calms down. He gets back up and reassures the others he's okay, but suddenly 2 hooks latch onto his body, dragging him into the darkness. The tricycle was a trap, and this girl backs away in terror, not realizing the clown is right behind her. He grabs the player by the throat and chokes her to death, making that 6 victims down with 2 more to go. Okay, this is horrifying. We've already lost 6 players, and now that means we're severely outnumbered. These clowns clearly know the layout of this place extremely well, and it's most likely that they have a series of secret pathways, so they can enter any room whenever they want. With this in mind, everyone should have considered joining forces earlier, and working together to take these killers down while they were at full strength. Unfortunately, we've completely lost this opportunity, and now we're down to the 2 final players. This seriously limits our options, and you might be thinking that with such few players left, we should just try winning the game. There's almost no competition left, so by killing our final opponent, we might be able to walk away with a $250,000 reward. Now, as tempting as this might be, the truth is, it would be a terrible mistake. If we look at this room, there are clearly dozens of dead bodies from previous death game contestants, and it tells us they're not planning on letting anyone out of here alive. Even if there was a winner, as soon as they're free, they would report this place to the police, and it would immediately be under investigation. For this exact reason, this player should have immediately realized that approaching the tricycle will be a complete waste of time. By continuing to play, we're letting the game master steer our attention directly into his traps, and it makes our actions a lot more predictable. For example, if they knew someone would be inspecting the clue, the clowns can position themselves in the room while we are distracted and stab us from behind. It's a classic misdirection tactic, but if we are thinking outside of the box, it puts more pressure on the game designer to adapt to us, and he won't be able to rely on his plans. Being unpredictable is our strongest tool we can use to escape this place, because it puts our enemies in a compromised position, and that's why if it were me, I would have instructed Scott here to arm himself literally. If we remove a limb off of this hook, it could be a great item to defend ourselves with, because not only can we hold it by the wrist to swing it as a weapon, but we would also be able to block their attacks if we see them coming. It becomes even more effective when you consider that this clown's weapon of choice seems to be meat hooks on chains. As scary as they might look, it's actually great news, because if we can break the flow of his swinging chain, he won't be able to attack anyone again until he builds back momentum, and it gives us the perfect opportunity to strike. That's why at this point, with 3 people still alive, the smartest thing to do is have Scott here lure the clown into swinging at him, block his attack with the chopped off arm, and then the other 2 girls can run towards the man, beating him to death with the other severed parts they find lying around. It's pretty brutal, but this is the perfect room to take our enemy down in, because this ray of light here tells us that somewhere on the opposite wall is a window to the outside. This is the only place we've seen so far that has a clear escape route, and if we don't take our opportunity now, it could be too late.
What's that song about gangsters moving all sneaky like?
Real G's move in silence like lasagna. You wrote it.
What? For real? Spin that.
Now playing on Amazon Music.
Real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Hey everybody, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, no matter how smart you are, even if you're the best neurosurgeon in the world, you don't do neurosurgery
exit. With 3 people, it wouldn't be hard to have one of the girls climb on someone's shoulders to reach the window, while Scott stands guard, watching for any other clowns to appear. If at least one of us escapes to unlock the doors or find some help, it improves everyone's chances of surviving. Unfortunately, nobody took any precautions, and now there's only 2 players left. Terrified, the remaining survivors run into the next room and find a stranger munching down on his food when he notices them enter. The circus freak approaches them and gets into a fight with Scott, but the survivor manages to get the upper hand, seizing the opportunity to break the stranger's neck. With that done, they continue through the building and look for an exit, but find themselves in a hospital room where they see an old man hooked up to a ventilator. Waking up, he takes off his mask and introduces himself as Balthazar Kane, the mastermind behind this death game. Scott is terrified and notices a knife on a table. Quickly picking it up, he demands to know why the man did all of this, and the game master walks over to a nearby counter to pick up his hat before justifying himself. Kane here explains that every victim claimed will ensure his legacy will be remembered forever, and that makes the kid furious. He threatens to murder the evil mastermind unless the psycho lets them go, but Kane laughs him off and puts his mask back on, activating a strange device. The survivors don't know what's happening, but they quickly run out of the room before he can attack them. They hide behind the bodies as the circus freaks search for them, but that's when Scott comes up with a plan. He tells the girl they can take down Kane if they split up and attack him together, but it's too late. He suddenly stabs straight through his stomach, and the kid falls to the ground dead, making that 7 victims down, and only 1 more to go. Kane has murdered her friend, and he mocks the girl, rubbing it in her face that she's the last survivor. It's traumatizing, and the girl runs away in horror, heading back into the main room before trying desperately to open the door, but it's locked. She's trapped, and that's when Kane walks in, deciding to make a deal, revealing that if Tracy wants to leave, all she has to do is press this button, but there's a catch. He'll do everything he can to stop her and swings his sword, backing the girl up against a wall. She pushes him away and runs for the button, but he manages to knock her down to the ground with no way to defend herself. Okay, these idiots just lost their best opportunity to beat this death game. When they first walked into the room, Kane here was in bed with an oxygen mask strapped to his face. It's an extremely compromising position to be in, and if they were thinking quickly, it would have been very easy for both of them to pick up literally any object in the room and start beating him to death. After everything they've been through, there's no doubt that this man is a serial killing monster, so it wouldn't be hard to convince the cops that your actions were taken in self-defense. Now, the last thing we want to have happen right now is for us to run recklessly back into the death traps because we're playing right into the game designer's hands. We have the upper hand as long as we're in this room because there's only 1 enemy to take down, and as far as we know, there aren't any dangerous puzzles here either. Running back into the death game would not only make us less careful to avoid the booby traps, but it would also drive us right into the other clowns who would be waiting inside to attack us, and that's why the smartest thing to do here is rush forward and stop this man from inhaling the green gas. Given this man's weak condition, this device is obviously feeding him a dose of adrenaline, and letting that happen is a huge mistake. That's why I would have used a front push kick to knock him down, then rip the mask off his face before he's able to use it. From there, we can also tell that the wall behind his bed looks like it's made from panels of wood, so I would start trying to break it down to see if there might be another way out of here that doesn't require us to retrace our steps all the way back through the death game room. Now, killing an old man in a hospital gurney is not an easy thing to do, and it's natural for these players to be frozen and shocked by everything that's happened. With this in mind, it's useful to have a plan B in place, and that's why as a last resort, we should consider the coward's way out. If for whatever reason violence is not an option here, I'd propose that he let us both survive, and in return, we would work for him, offering to lure more victims into his secret death games. It might sound ridiculous, but in his line of work, it's probably hard to find good help, and with so much work put into setting these games up, he's probably desperate for support in carrying out his plans. It's definitely a Hail Mary tactic, but there's nothing to lose in making the suggestion, and if we run out of options, this strategy could keep us alive long enough to escape later on. The killer has the upper hand and stands over her, ready to murder the girl, but then she punches him between the legs. Tracy quickly takes the opportunity to rush for the button and press it, unlocking the door. She runs out of the mansion as fast as she can and finds police officers stepping out of their car. The girl begs the man to help her get out of there, insisting Kane is going to murder her, and that's when the cops see the game master making his way down the stairs. The officer orders him to stay where he is or else they'll shoot, but the man refuses to obey, and the cops take him down. With Kane dead, Tracy is taken to the police station where she gives the officer her statement on what happened, but the detective finds it hard to believe. The man makes it clear she'll have to stay here until they check security footage from the mansion, and he excuses himself to talk with his partner. Behind the one-way mirror, the man is shown a file on Kane and notices a newspaper clipping telling them that the game master had killed someone named Robert Valentine. That was Tracy's father, and the detective heads back into the interrogation room, reassuring the girl she's free to go. But they don't realize she was behind the death game this whole time. Tracy is actually Kane's daughter, and after he was released from prison, they planned out this entire event so that she could replace him after his death. It's an ambitious plan, and soon the girl will carry on his legacy of keeping the entire world